Hi, so in this video, I'm going to just talk a little bit about how you think about analogous color in a painting, why it's important, and I guess what it is, not necessarily in that order. And you can see this photo right here. I'm gonna demonstrate two ways to do it. One is a very loose interpretive way using analogous color, and the other will be a much more careful rendition. So that's what I'm gonna do. So analogous color basically is when you take, it's basically a color, any given color has a shift as it moves from light to shadow, from warmer to cooler. And by creating this shift, even if it's very subtle, you really get interesting colors. So for example, if green is something that people have a lot of trouble with. So if I want to think about green in an analogous way, I'm starting here with the yellow green, and I might even move it into a blue or a blue green, but that at minimum would be the analogous of, green. And analogous basically means that you take each primary and all colors that relate to that. In other words, all colors that have that mix in it would be analogous to it. So for example, yellow, you usually start at one of the primaries. So right here, all of these colors starting here have yellow as the common denominator. Not a lot, but anyways, turquoise has a little yellow, green, orange, red, and all the way up to red, violet, vermilion. So that here, all of these, this is the analogous scheme of yellow. And to make a painting interesting, you want to play off these warms and cools from each other, both from object to object, but also within the color area of something. So, so as an example here, I'm looking at this leaf, and you might not be able to see it, but to me it shifts a little bit orange yellow into a more yellow green. And that's not exactly analogous, but that will create a really much more vibrant green than if I just slapped some yellow on there. And then analogous of red would be starting at red. Let's see, no, starting at red. All of the colors, sorry, starting just after yellow here, and ending at blue. So all of these colors here, here, I don't know what's wrong with me today, but all of these colors are analogous of red. They have the common denominator of red in them. Yellow, orange, orange, red, violet, violet, blue, violet. And you do the same for yellow. I just did yellow. So for blue, that starts at yellow and ends at red. Now I get it. So all of these colors have an analogous color scheme to blue. And I think just looking at those together, or just any of these, looking at them together is just they're so beautiful when they're paired together. So you sort of use analogous color to create interest within color areas and shifts, but also it's how you play one object off another to create interest. So in this photo, for example, I have these beautiful magenta reds, and I'm going to against sort of some orangey coral reds, and that to me is very important to making these reds come alive. I also have a play from almost like a bluish green into, the strongest yellow green. So all of that kind of could be expressed in terms of analogous color. Okay. So there's sort of two ways that I'm just going to show you today. The first is interpretive, where you sort of divide your painting up into warm and cool zones, and you put a cool color where you perceive cool color, and a warm where you perceive warm. So one way I could divide this up is I could take some of these reds, these, maybe all these, and all of this could maybe have something under them, either like a cool pink or a violet. And then over here is where I might have more of the hot orange colors, and all of this might have yellow under it. So I'll just show, so that's the first way I'm going to show. That's very interpretive and loose, but either, no matter what you do, and the other way, I'm sorry, the other way that I would do this is the way I normally like to paint, which is I just pretty much on something like this, I would paint object by object, because there's so much beautiful color in any one of these pieces that I want to be able to capture it all. So I would probably, on a large painting, I would just wet this one, and get the color changes and shifts in each one. And another way that, I'm just going to show one more thing before I get started. There are a couple of ways that you can think about analogous color. One is, to mix it. One is where you basically just use all the different pigments on your palette. So if I want to make a red that's really vibrant, I might take this beautiful Scarlet Lake. I might even mix a little yellow into it to get a more orangey tone. And if I pair that with the magenta, which is Permanent Rose in this case, you see how each one informs the other. And to me, that's very much what's happening here, something like that. And the same with greens. If I want to have really lively greens, I can start with literally a yellow. Might even move it into a little orange just to begin with, just to be contrary. Yellow, green. But see how even just those two, to me that's what I would see here. Even those two just so enliven each other. And then I might move into, this is this color called May Green. You could mix too. I'll show you how this would work. And then follow that with more of a, getting into the more blue-greens. Like that. So to me that's really makes green come alive. Much nicer than if I just tried to mix a green. And I think this is one of the hardest things for, see, to me this is nice, but this is so much nicer. To me, one of the hardest things for painters to really grasp is how much color variety there are in things that you paint. And to me, the color variety is what makes a painting come alive. So it really just comes down to very careful observation of colors in a painting, and even experimenting as you go. I just wanted to show you one other thing, and some of you I know this already, so I'm sorry. Another way you can, create analogous color is just, let's say I'm working with red, I just take one red, in this case it's Permanent Rose. I think this is my Permanent Rose, actually, yeah. Dirty Permanent Rose. And to this, I'm going to make 2 puddles of it. And to one puddle, I'll add a yellow to make it warmer. And then one puddle, I'm just going to leave it alone. And the other puddle, I'm going to add something blue. In this case, I'll use ultramarine. This is like if you're painting sunsets or skies, this is a great combo to use. And then I'm going to shift it into the more blue color. And again, this, see, I think this is a little more vibrant. but this also can work. You can even take the extreme, you can put down a little yellow and a little bit of blue or violet. I think I'll use a little violet. I would normally let this dry, but I'm just going to poke the red on here. But do you see how the red, this could be an underpainting or not, or even just like that. But you can really see how working this way is a great way to work. Well, I think it is. So you can interpret these analogous colors in any way. Then the other thing I think about, back to my color wheel, I also, sometimes the painting just tells you what to do, but I also think about, well, how do I make this color really come alive? And if I'm working within the confines of an analogous color scheme, so I've kind of in my yellows here, all of these have yellow as a common denominator. So I can either use an opposite complement to really pop that, or I can just take the furthest extreme from yellow. So that would be either probably this turquoise blue or this red orange. And those could be colors I could choose to surround this with. And if I want it to stand out, I create the maximum contrast. So this is like a turquoise blue. You see how that really enlivens that. But as I move this color down, you see it doesn't do much down here. So I maybe would shift it a little bit. I'm going to push in some violet. Something like that. Or I could just be, if I wanted, let's say I wanted this whole thing to stand out, I could just choose, I could surround it with like turquoise here, orange here, or I could just choose the color that makes the most sense. There's so many options. Let's see. So this red orange, can you see how that would make that really pop? And I could move this into turquoise if I wanted the maximum pop. That's a new word. Or just continue this up, because I think that works also. But because I have an orange here, if I want to continue a red up, I need to move it into a cooler red. So I'm taking my permanent rose and I'm mixing a little violet in it. And you see how that just looks so much better. Anyways, I love doing, this is something I do before I start without really, I'm not trying to think too hard, but I can explore the different layers and what do I put over something and what happens. And I find that's just really fascinating. To me, it's still wet. Okay. Oh well. Okay. But even just doing that, I find very helpful. And just in case you need to know, I'm using Scarlet Lake and Permanent Rose for my warm and cool reds, and for the blues I'm using either Cobalt or Ultramarine and Winsor Blue. Yellows are the cadmiums. All right. So first I'm just going to show you like a kind of interpretive way to do this, and then I'm going to go and show you something a little more fancy. Okay. So if I'm thinking about warms and cools, I'm thinking about maybe which colors have yellow as the common denominator under them, and maybe other ones, I guess, that have like a more blue color or even a violet. And I think I'm going to go with violet. So I'll just show you how that'll go. you could, I'm going to try to keep most of this very fluid, but it's almost always the case that you have to leave one or two things white to start with. And I'm using dirty water, but that's the way it goes. It's the way the cookie crumbles. Okay, I guess. Okay. So all of these colors to me feel like they have some yellow under them. I'm going to leave this vein of the leaf white. And I left this leaf where it has that really nice blue. Okay. And this is just rough, so I'm really editing it quite a bit. But to me, all of this could have a base of some kind of a yellow. But the important thing for me is to vary it. I don't want to have the same yellow everywhere. So as I said, I saw some orange up here. So I'm going to start with kind of a cadmium yellow deep, which is very orangey. And it's going to dry lighter, so I think this should work. And then I'm just going to move that. I like to switch my yellows because I find I get even more bang. Wrong word, but see, I'm shifting into a more greener yellow in here. And I'm just going to place all different kinds of yellows on this as I see them. So more orangey yellow under here. Pretty much orangey yellow under these. And then for the green, I'm using more of a lemon. That's right down here. But like, as I said, this is a very interpretive way to work. But a lot of fun. So all of that to me has a yellow base. The rest is going to have the blue. And I'll just show that. I'd normally wait for this yellow to dry before doing the blue. And I see this as a blue color. You can see it when I hold this paper up to it. It's very violet. So that's going to be the base color that I'm going to use. Just to get started though, I'm going to leave a little strip of dry paper between these areas that are wet. And I'm just going to take a little bit of Winsor blue to get this sort of pretty first color. And I like to wet it with water first, as you know, just because that just gives me a lot more play of the color. Actually, I'll just try it this way. So this is going to dry a lot lighter, but to my eye, that's sort of the lightest highlight color. And you can already, to me anyways, I can already see a really lovely play of color. And this way, you know, just so you know, this is an interpretive way to work. And I don't have to use all one color. I'm shifting the blue as I move through this. And I'll come back to this later as well. But that's that would be a really fun way. I think that would be a really fun way to lay in this painting. So I'm going to put this aside. And now I have something different. So this is actually a bigger version of what this sketch that I just did, which I have to find somewhere to put. Right, okay. And in this one, I'm doing a little bit of a different approach. Hopefully this will stay. In this one, I want to sort of pretty much just wet each leaf individually and create these shifts in color. All right, let's see. Yeah, that'll work. Sorry, I have to get more water. Oh. It's arbitrary in this case where I start, but I'm starting down here with this leaf because I already have the colors already here. So I'm pretty much doing almost the same thing, except I'm looking even more carefully at the colors. I'm seeing this orange at the edge here, followed by a turquoise, which will come through this, and also this. But wetting it just gives me a little more time. Actually, it's more like that. But pretty much everything you paint has a shift in color. And to me, it's just a practice that you sort of develop, that you try to engage with. Okay, so that's basically all I did, was just that right there. This is really pretty turquoise that I want to kind of edge it with. And I think I can just bring this turquoise pretty much onto most of this. And that would be how I would start that. That's good. But I'm really thinking about analogous color all the way through. So when I edged this, I thought about a turquoise that moved into a blue, and the red and the greens should come over this later. One last thing to do. So those are basically all of sort of these undercolors that I see. And I think, let's see. Yeah, I think just because I'm not allowed to, Google doesn't let me make long videos. This is the end of part 1, and then I will start part 2 shortly now.